hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Shall we just go ahead and get started?
Go ahead, yeah.
Do you want to do any kind of intro
sure.
or do you want, I'm happy to do the
Just
intro.
you do.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Corinne Nakamura Ryback. I'm a founding member of Nricha Mandala Mahavihara and a senior dancer and assistant teacher with Dance Mandal. Tonight we're joined by Helen Fox-Appel II and Mayo Ahrens for a conversation about the vision and creation of the temple. That was done 12 years ago, so welcome. A little bit about Helen. Helen has been a Buddhist practitioner for many years. She is an ordained priest and co-establisher of the No Abode Hermitage in Marin County, California. Of course, she's the co-founder of our own temple, Nricha Mandala Mahavihara, and has served in the role as artistic and organizational director since its inception. She's a senior teacher and dancer in the Charya Nricha tradition and has taught many of us here in the Vihara in Portland. She's also taught in Brazil. I saw Miri here and some others. She's taught in California and assisted Prajwal in Nepal back in the old days. She continues to teach private lessons online and continues to write and promote the traditions of Newar Buddhism. We all benefit from Helen's artistic vision, which is embedded everywhere throughout Nricha Mandala Mahavihara, and it's manifested in the way we approach the arts as a sacred practice, in dance, choreography, through the costume design, giti and music programming, craftsmanship of the objects, and ritual. So thank you, Helen, for being here tonight. I'd also like to introduce Mayo Ahrens. Mayo describes himself as a carpenter with a hammer and saw. I thought that was such a modest introduction because we know he puts so much of himself into his work and adds thought and beauty into everything that he creates, as we can see here at the temple. He's originally from Germany, where he grew up in the northern and central regions. There he gained his apprenticeship in the trade. Mayos has traveled extensively across Europe and settled in Portland 17 years ago, where he met his wife, Julie. Julie coincidentally also learned Charya Nricha in Nepal with Prajwal and was a student of his when she was traveling in Nepal. Mayo loves hiking and getting out in nature. He and his wife live in Portland with their 3 children. I'd like to welcome you both and thank you for being here tonight. This question is for both of you. What was your introduction to Newar Buddhism, and how did you learn about the lineage that Prajwal is, Prajwal's lineage? And Helen, we can start with you and then move to Mayo.
Thank you, Corinne. My very first was, I had just gotten back from living and studying in India, and I went to a Tibetan store, and there was a beautiful greeting card on Nepalese paper, and it was one of the most gorgeous paintings of a deity I'd ever seen, and it was a contemporary Newar of Padmanabheshvara, the Lord of the Dance. And so that is the Charya patron deity. And so that was my very first. I did not know who Padmanabheshvara was or anything about it. And then I stayed studying in Vajrayana, but I became interested in monastic practice. So I went into the Zen monastery and lived as a priest there. And a couple times the monastery hosted Prajwal dancing. And for me, at that time, I was very much into sitting and had no interest in dancing. So that was my first real exposure to Newar tradition. And I loved it because I love the aspect, his name, just the name, Prajal Vajracharya, is so Sanskrit, and I had such a feeling for Sanskrit at that time, and my days in India. So that was my first really introduction, but I wasn't ready to leave the monastery yet. Wasn't ready to get up and dance.
That would have been quite a change from a lot of sitting to just getting up and dancing.
Yes. And then actually, when I did start dancing, I danced in the Indian classical tradition after I left the monastery. And both my Indian classical dance teacher and Satya, who many of you know, is a Zen priest here who I practiced with in California for years. And he told me he had done a workshop with Prajal. So he told me about Prajal, and my Indian classical dance teacher told me about Prajal, but at the same time, you should go study with him. So that's how that started. And I went up to Portland for my niece's wedding, and that was that. That was the beginning. I had lunch. I called him up. Prajal invited me to her lunch, and we talked for 6 hours. And that was
Sorry. Wonderful. Mayo, what about you? How did you get introduced to Prajal?
Through my wife Julie, or she rather, she had met him probably, I don't know the exact year, but like probably in the late 90s or so, while being in Nepal, and she had extensively traveled throughout Asia. She had lived there for about 5 years in various countries, and then had met Prajal at I think a workshop, and extended, I don't know, a week's worth of studying with him, and then just being back home here in Portland, probably right around 2000 or 2001. I think she had saw his flyer on some good old PGE pole, stapled up his flyer, and immediately recognized his name, and so that's how she connected with him then back home here in Portland.
That's great. I wonder which PGE poll that was.
Somewhere along Hawthorne, most likely even, yeah, I would assume. Very close by, probably.
Great. Well, thank you. These next 2 questions are for Helen. Helen, as the co-founder, you and Prajwal had the vision to create the first Mahavihara in the last 350 years. And it's the first ever outside of Nepal to be built. How did you 2 come up with such an ambitious idea and project?
Well, we certainly didn't think of it as the first in 350 years or any kind of Mahavihara at all. We really just wanted a place that was a real temple for the temple dance. We wanted to be able to dance in a ritual environment, and that was the main thing. But we had both been first. He was teaching out of his living room, and then my living room when I moved up, and we created that space to look like a temple. But of course, it wasn't at all the same thing. And then we had a Newar night one night at that house, my first house up here, and we had all sorts of things for all the Newars, brought all kinds of objects, and carvings and beautiful statues and vases of, for rituals, all these ritual objects. We had lots of tankas, poba, the Mewar style, and even carved windows that somebody brought, and so there it was. This was a special event that we invited lots of people to come, and all the Mewars cooked a big feast. And with that, it was like, well, this is our museum, but it was like a museum. We had descriptions on everything, and it was quite a process. And but we thought maybe we don't need to do a museum. Maybe someday we actually should have a temple, and we can see if we can find carved windows. And at that point, Nepal for a while Kathmandu hadn't been creating these kind of objects as far as like the carved windows, and it came out of fashion kind of. And then they were starting to come back. And so we found online that we could find these things. And so we went on a trip to get them and find the people to carve. But it was a very slow, organic process. We thought we would build a studio. We bought the space that you're in now and where Mayo built. But at first we thought just a studio, because we didn't imagine that we could really build a temple where it would be consecrated and, empowered every day with the Nitya Puja. I mean, it was that was a slow process to get to there for our minds to be able to take that in.
Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like you were starting to bring all these ritual objects in, and you had these things to help create the space, and then you said, why not build a dedicated space to practice?
Yeah. Rather than try to make one look like one, like we do with living room.
Mm-hmm. And what in your background prepared you to start the building of it?
I liked to build when I was young. I used to build things on my own. I always, even before I got into practices, I just always admired the image of Saint Francis building brick by brick out of nowhere, building this kind of temple or something, barefoot, one brick at a time, and other people helping, and just so beautifully hand done. Though I always had that image in my mind. Of course, I wanted to do it that way here, but nobody else wanted to, which I understand.
But barefoot and brick by brick?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least brick by brick anyway. But so I just like to build things and create things and build boat, and I just like to do things like that. And then when I got into practice, my teacher understood that about me, and he asked me to build this mandala house. It was a miniature one that they used for self-initiation, and the Dalai Lama was coming, and so for his self-initiation for the Avalokiteshvara empowerment, I was to build this mandala house, and that was quite an honor and a very beginning of my Buddhist practice. So, and then His Holiness came, and anyway, that for me that was like my first little sacred building, and just a little thing, but I felt it was blessed and by for a future with this holiness, being there for that. And and after that, the no abode hermitage, you know, we bought a place and we made that into looking and became a Zen monastery hermitage. So also there, and yeah, it's just seems to be part of my makeup to do that. Yeah. And before I did it with my own hands, but gratefully I have Mayo now. I had Mayo to do this big one. Yeah.
And Maya, do you recall back in the days when you were introduced to the project, and what did you think? Had you built a temple before, or did you?
Certainly not. I mean, I was sort of excited from the get-go for the type of project and what it could. In my wildest imagination, I could not have, you know, dreamt of anything as cool as this. How it all evolved throughout literally the years into what it became eventually, with many, not just my hands, but you know, dozens and dozens of people that were involved, that yeah, just started. Everyone contributed in their own way to make it all happen. So yeah, really very fulfilling experience for certainly myself, but I think most all people involved were just they got it, you know.
Well, when we were talking earlier, you said this was a feed the soul kind of a project. Can you share a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Sorry, can you repeat the term? I didn't get it.
Sure. Well, this is your term. That
Yeah, I know, but I did.
You said that building the temple fed your soul, and it was the kind of project that just feeds your soul. What is that? What is that like?
Maybe as in how should I describe? Where there is a direction with lots of guidance, but then this whole process of it evolving with lots of different people, and I don't know, from the weather may even just dictate on how something evolves or changes, and you know, various people coming in with new ideas and other materials and different circumstances and whole new ideas, and just a very organic process on how everything does come together.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I enjoyed that process very much.
What about with sacred architecture and with the building and the temple, there's a lot of really significant kinds of things that need to go in different, you know, the four directions, or things on the edges of the four corners, things like that. How can you give us any examples of what you learned about the architecture and Newar architecture as you were building the temple?
So one thing that just came up also, just today again, regarding various different goddesses that represent a whole lot of different meanings that unfortunately I'm not quite aware of what they all individually are, but sort of the four corners of the building itself are animal goddesses that do represent individual things, and then in between those different four individual corners are female goddesses that do have their own meanings as well. And yeah, just that is maybe a good example in terms of how it all evolves. Like I could have not even, I mean, I felt literally honored to be able to touch these. First off, for me being a carpenter and a woody nutty wood guy, touching, you know, this wood out of literally not just a foreign country, but a different continent, and being carved into these goddesses that are now hanging out here in Portland. And I felt honored to yeah, install these, and sort of it took me a few days to not just double, triple, but like quadruple measure everything before you then you make the cut, and there is no extras there. You just have one chance at everything you're doing. So it was no, a very very rewarding experience.
Oh, good. So it sounds like it's a mindfulness practice also.
Yes, it certainly was.
Helen, did you want to add anything about some of the significance of the sacred architecture, or anything that you were thinking of as you two were working together?
Well, the ceiling, which was not it's sacred, but it was not traditional, and that's something we came up with, Maya and I, through our collaborative efforts, that we certainly had to do a lot of, because we were just trying to figure things out as we go, since nobody else had ever built a new art temple in the West. And so we were, yeah, had to just try to figure it all out ourselves. And so there was a lot of stepping back and discussing, and you know, he would get an idea, and from that idea I'd get an idea, and from that idea he'd get an idea, and then I'd get an idea, and it just became something completely different than either of us had ever thought we would think of, you know. And that was our collaborative effort. And the ceiling is definitely a good example of that, and the mandala idea of it. And I want to say something about that, because Joseph said something about facing front always when you dance. And so for me, when that happened, when we came up with this mandala on the ceiling by wood pieces, and then you know, and the squares, and then the circle, it was just clearly that this is where we would dance under. And it was a mandala, so you'd face all directions, you know, and we've all done that before, where we dance facing each direction different times, and you have to be aware of behind you, front of you, sides, everywhere, because people are sitting all around as part of the mandala. Yeah, so that ceiling, you know, created a lot of added beauty in many ways, and sacredness. Yeah.
Yeah, it really has. And you're right about the about performing in the round like that. You know, it's very, it heightens everything.
Yes, heightens is the word. Indeed.
Yeah, and it puts things always well in perspective, as in, like, because it's always symmetrical for me. Somehow, yeah, organic flows, I really love those, but having everything just symmetrical, because then there is always the mirror image of each thing that you're approaching or looking at. There's always the other side, and it does match. There's, yeah, always the opposite. The opposite is always just right on the other side. So that's that was a there's another detail that would be too hard to explain probably, how, because I just distinctly remember how the different boards, different width, how they all line up, same identical lengths diagonally across on the opposite side. So I think, I don't know, it all might make no sense to most of you, but it just all dawned on me on there's always two pieces of each in this entire ceiling, actually.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a mandala right there. That perfection of symmetry like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the lights, that was another great thing in that area and that ceiling. And then we put the tikicha, the lattice around, and Dave, our dear friend and great helper in this process also, put the rope lights in there, and just created a beautiful environment.
Mm-hmm. When you were building the temple, we talked about some different phases. There was kind of like the planning phase and the foundational phase, and then there were some surprises that happened, and then went into like phase 2 after like the restoration and things like that. Do you want to walk us through some of the different stages and surprises that came up?
If I should, the surprise was potentially the large fire that did cost almost my friend's life, as including myself. There was a very unfortunate incident with a improperly stored gas can, and almost everything and everyone did catch on fire, and I'm glad we are all in good health 12 years later, 13 to be exact. But that was definitely a life-changing event for both of us. We are in good spirits.
Yeah.
It's still a little funny to talk about at times, especially in this type of setting for me anyway. So
okay. Yeah.
Maybe Helen has a better bird's eye view type perspective on this.
Yeah, it was a very painful time, of course, but you came back pretty quick after your month in Emmanuel Burns Center, and we had lots of prayers done everywhere for you and Joe, and you were amazing. You started working again, creating more in the building when it had to be. I can't remember actually when you, but you came back pretty quickly, and you were.
As soon as I could limp, literally.
Huh?
As soon as I could limp, and sort of, because the whole walking and just getting moving was just really a hard process. And actually through the project and through the work that was part of at least the physical healing was definitely that process was cut in half or severely sped up for sure.
Yeah. So he was back at work, and we also had the disaster restoration people doing the work, and Prajal had to move out. And he moved in. The temple actually nothing happened to the temple. It was the house itself. And we had just all those struts, the goddesses that Maya was just talking about, all these beautiful carved goddesses had arrived like a month, I don't know, maybe a month before. And Prajal and I decided to move them the night before the fire. And we moved them to a different room. And the fire happened right where those struts had been. So nothing in the temple was damaged, nothing that in the temple or anything that was to go on the temple that had come from Nepal was all saved. And then some new creations happened, and for the wall facing the temple, because that was the wall that was facing the temple in the house, and the door, so we put a door in so that there was a courtyard entrance, and just like in a Mewar temple courtyard, and all sorts of, made the stucco sides instead of siding, because that wall had been siding, but that had all burned. And it matched the stucco of the temple. So it was really just created this amazing situation. And Maya was a big part of creating that, so he had been back and creating that.
Peeling of the skin, to say, ironically.
What's that?
I said sort of the peeling of the skin, as in society.
Yes.
We lost a lot of skin. That's true.
Oh God. We were gonna show some pictures of the temple before it was the temple. Prajwal's gonna share some images just for folks who maybe haven't seen it, or I haven't seen it in a while either. Thanks for pulling that up, Prajwal.
Oh, sorry. That's the original map of we made it in Nepal. One of the architecture made it this, and based on that, we made it this beautiful temple here. In the night of the temples, you look this way, and then the before the temples are built, this is the garage, the car garage, with the car garage is there, and then you can see from the gardens, little garden there, there's a tree. Now it's a little bit bigger, that tree. We keep it as it is, that tree. And inside the garage have a little bit filthy, dirty lookings, because it's been storage, lots of things in there. And so that's why we, groundbreaking rituals happen there, and transformations happening. Little by little, it's measured with all the wood and filing out the wood, and then construction started. So, and after construction started in a different view, so you can see this is from the roadside, from the view in the footage.
And you can see, excuse me, Patel, on the right, the difference in the house too. That's the Vihara now, part of the courtyard.
Yeah, color has been changed, and lots of things has been changed. So then it's gradually built with the layers after layers, one layers to other layers. The teams. So this then the most important team is this one. So this is this manifestation with the multiple arms deities to build this temple.
That's great.
So yeah, gradually it's moved on with all the threads, and then inside the temple we have all the pipe with the water heater pipe, hot water running, and so it is, gradually buildings and installing windows, and then built the dirt on theirs, and the hot water started drying, and that's the picture doesn't come out. So the walls been sealed with a different way, so that happened, and then this was paint the house like this. In every rooms in this house, painted bright colors. In each colors have each different color, yellow, orange, and blue. Each rooms have a different.
They all were like poster paints, kind of colored rooms when we first got it.
Okay, I didn't put all together lots of pictures, but I just want to show you what it look like. This is the real it is, so that's the look like.
What about a picture of now with the whole courtyard feeling and the house and the temple?
Oh,
together.
I don't put that picture. Let me see. I have that picture. I pull up. Sorry, I was not thinking that part, but I have
That's
a
okay.
yeah.
People can come see.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the yeah.
How was that seeing that bring back memories for you both?
Yes, totally. Lots of good memories.
It's so
Good
interesting.
memories.
Painful stuff too. Yes. Starting with all the mud and the never-ending rain in Portland for sure.
Was that
Yeah.
the thing that got in the way of the building? Was the rain, or did you just work right through it?
Yeah, we just put on your hoodie and just plug away.
Like they all do.
That's right.
It's doing it here too. Yeah, it's my memories go back to feeling, is this really gonna ever happen? You know,
Uh-huh.
it's just it's hard to believe we would actually have something like that created, and then that people would come, and enough people to come to do the rituals every day. And yeah, it's remarkable.
And look, it's been 12 years now.
Yeah,
Every single day.
fine strong.
Yeah, and it's still happening. Maybe we should take some questions from the viewers. People, if you have any questions, you can raise your hands.
Yeah. If you have any questions, raise your hand. Ask. I can.
Somebody's raising.
Oh, is that Susie? Are you?
No, it's a Chris. Chris want to ask.
Hi. I'm gonna try to make it short. Well, the question is short. For Helen, I guess your because I looked up your at No Abode. I looked it up. That you come from the Zoroastrian tradition.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's well, I'm from California myself, so it's the one that's very established is all the way up in Shasta. And it's a scenic trip all the way up there. I've gone there myself. I've gone there with a friend long time ago. But from that tradition, it's very prolific on the West Coast. How did that influence the process that you went through with Prajwal and Mayo in creating the mandal part of the temple and the mandir part itself proper? And of course, for you, Mayo, since you're a carpenter, but you're also, I'm thinking you carved some of it. You were talking about the bird's eye view, the creative and the logical. How did that come together for you as someone who's a carpenter and someone who needed to be creative and logical back and forth, or even creative processes? We think it's separate, but it's when you're actually creating, it's integrated. It merges. So I guess, yeah, those are two separate questions for you guys. Thank you.
Shall I go? I'll go, but the mandala actually is more from my Tibetan background. So I have, I'd spent 6 years in India studying Tibetan Buddhism. So I have the Vajrayana background also. And so I'd say, as the temple, there is a Zen aspect to it because it's very simple in a way. It doesn't have a lot of, I don't know,
right,
color.
yeah, the oomph, the The
Yeah,
I mean, I sat, and it's the movement aspect of it, or the visualization aspect. There's no oomph in it. There's no chutzpah in it. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say there's no chutzpah. The chutzpah isn't as obvious
in the temple,
in Zen.
it was created to feel like a womb.
Right.
And
Agarba. Right.
yeah.
Agarba. Right. Okay.
So that was the main feeling around it. From being in the temples in Nepal, I felt like it was needed to be womb-like, which I felt there in Nepal. So really, I feel I was much more influenced with my Tibetan Vajrayana background, and I had been studying the dance for a few years also before we created that. So
right, because if you look at Pauba and Tangka tradition, they're Yabyum, they're Yin Yang, they're really what they're in essence. They're one and the same, but one is, well, we think in Tangka tradition. I mean, I studied Tibetan long time ago too. Probably as a student. It seems very static, at least on the surface. And Pawa tradition is seen as we look to learn how to move into, Tanka is very meditative, supposedly, but it's not really. It's only on the surface. But when we look at Tanka and we look at mandala, the mandala is supposed to become 3D in our mind's eye. So yeah, I get that. And of course, then it's complementary, because you can't have kama binding without all of that. So okay, I get that. Yeah.
right.
That's great.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And Mayo, if you may.
Yeah, so regarding the question for me, the sort of lost track. I know you mentioned the bird's eye perspective. That was, I think, still related to the fire, where I felt like, maybe it was a little too personal, and therefore Helen may have had a better perspective of sort of that time period and how things had shifted and stuff. And so
sorry, maybe the creative and the logical aspect of creating, because you put your own, when you go through a process like that. I write prose and I write poetry. So for me, it's in written form. But when you create, in my one side of my family, they come from carpentry stock. My father's side, my father's father. The creative and the logical, they're separate when we think of it, linearly. But when we actually are creating, it's not that separate. It's integrated. And I mean, from the fire, when you said that with the fire, well, attachment is not attachment once you look at it. But yeah, I guess that goes into being creative and logical. I wonder how you went through that process and how that transformed you.
So for me, yeah, always looking at the there's always a vision, or sort of the interpretation of what I think what the task is, what the final outcome is of what each individual aspect of the greater project will look like. And then there is, these, generically for me, being at work, but no, going to work, maybe even waking up in the morning, and you think of all these little details on how things fit together, and in what sequence things need to happen in order to get to the next step and the next phase. But it's sort of always a moving target. You can never, same as that fire. You can never predict, and all of a sudden everything does change, and life looks all quite different, and that's sort of a very organic process again on how this, not just the entire project, but even in each individual portion of the project, how everything evolved. I may have not completely answered your question, got a little sidetracked.
Oh, I think you did. The rest is left to to process and to mull over. Sometimes I think, from personal, well, I don't know if it's completely personal experience, things that are cataclysmic bring good fruit. They bring pala. They bring good fruit, or a good reaction. And sometimes it's necessary to gather, like you were saying, Helen, into the womb. Literally, it was, the temple is considered Tathagata Garba, but to save oneself in the process is very important, because we're a part of that. As much as a mandala is organically just separate in ritual, we're supposed to be engendering compassion within ourselves, but we need to do that within our own physical person in order to go out into the world and share that. So it's a healing process no matter what. Even the dance in the Cham dance in Tibetan tradition, and the chariot dances and the gitis are very important. Whether it's the Kangling in Tibetan tradition, or the the song itself in Nawar tradition, it's very important to sing it through and to work it through. Creating something as big as a temple, it takes many parts. It's no small part and no small experience of anything creative is not. It's important. All of it's important. As someone who writes, I can attest to that. But I think there's an analog in the carving and the carpentry process, and the thinking. It attests to Buddha nature. It attests to the spirit. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for your question, Chris. Are there questions for Helen and Mayo? Terry, I see you have your hand up.
I just want to say thank you so much. Meeting Prajwal and discovering Sanskrit-based Buddhism has been the boom of my existence in this lifetime. So I want to thank you both for creating this profound reflection of the Dharma in Portland.
Maho, thank you.
Thank you.
So glad you have found it, and that you can spend time there with Prajal.
Well, we are at the end of our time together for this section, and just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience and of the vision and the building of the temple, and we all benefit so much from it. So thank you, and happy anniversary to our temple.
Yay. And I want to share this. This is something I just came across recently, since we're talking about anniversary, the first anniversary card that Corinne created
Nice.
for the invitation.
Yeah.
Open
Aw,
house invitations. Yeah.
Yeah.
lovely.
Very nice.
Thank you, Corinne, for that beautiful thing.
Oh, my pleasure. All right. Well, thank you, Mayo, and thank you, Helen.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, everyone, for being here and part of the temple
Yeah.
for Jal's life.
It's like everybody talk me, this is, I don't know, I didn't do anything. So I just feel like I don't do anything. This Myers and Helen does everything. Then I got it always credit. That's just so bad. It's not good to have a credit. So credit goes to the Helen, credit goes to the Mayo instead of me, you know.
This is what all the Dzogchen masters say. They don't do anything.
I don't do anything. Yeah.
You, come on.
You know, they are not around here. I'm only around here. That's the other region. So
You were the inspiration.
yeah. So
And
because of
continue.
me staying here, so everybody comes and they see me. That's only they talk about like that. So it's literally that now you know. Tomorrow you will know more about how many people are volunteering to continue this spiritual journey for up to 12 years. So tomorrow is Miranda says, Dr. Miranda saw, it's monitoring all the volunteers and all the pujaris, so what they have to say. So you will know that is who are the behind to have continue with this journey. And in my life also, the Miranda is the first persons who introduced into the America. She's the one who introduced to the all the Dharma world. She's the one who's bring it to the America and connecting to all the wonderful peoples around in the America. So that's why she's monitoring tomorrow. I hope tomorrow it's a different link. So if you don't get a link, there is in the emails, also in the web page. There's a two web pages always. So portlandbaha.org and dancemandala.com. portlandbaha.org and dancemandala.com. So tomorrow is all the volunteers and the dancers will be discuss about the how they feels with being a volunteer. Everything's around in this temple is the volunteer. So that's why we try to bring it. And then also the next day on Monday, there's one is the volunteers, which my beginner volunteers. When I move, he also moved in the same times in Portland. So he also giving a talk on a presentation. Subasake, he's giving. So please join. This will be the same link in the evening link. It will be same link. So he giving presentations, his connections with that. So yeah, thank you very much for everybody. So I just enjoying to hear a lot of wonderful things. So I should not take a credit for this everything, because behind supporting me is so many other people there. So I should give a credit for everyone, not me. So.
And behind us, there's so many people supporting us too.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
Means we have lots of people that you don't see. That's why this is the program. We made it this way. So this year, because always like a Mayo is never seen here. Nobody knows the Mayo. Even like Helen used to live. Helen used to come, and she's just living, fading. Now new people doesn't know even Helen anymore. So that's why this will be documentation, and also it's wonderful to have all of so to show that it's like how the Nityananda Mahavihara runnings and who are behind the Nityananda Mahavihara. So we also have a board here, Corinne who is monitoring today. She's a board. Also Cones we have here. She's also the board here. And Upasake, I don't know.
I didn't see her yet.
So
yeah.
Anyhow, so those make this happen. So that's why now it's 12 years, not a single day stop the ritual. Not twice a day it's been continuous doing ritual. So it never stop and keep the spirit. That's where the spirit comes. So it is, something's always happening here. So yeah, that's the great.
Mangalam.
Yeah, Suji, thank you. I'm going to stop recording and also to stop